back. This is another episode of the Government Coins podcast. Listen, I am super excited about this. As y'all know, I'm always excited about this. I am one of those, people that really get excited about sharing the information and just being able to put you in contact with people who are doing the work. Okay. So today, I know we typically get a lot of businesses who are asking, do you provide support in doing certain tasks, whether it's writing proposals or helping with consulting and marketing and business development style work? And my answer is always no, I don't. But I like to make sure that you have access to the resources that you need to get into this space and navigate effectively, because we know small businesses are typically practitioners. We're doing the work and trying to get the work coming in at the same time. So that's what my guest today, I'm very excited to share. So Shenê Commodore, she's going to come in and talk a little bit about navigating government procurement process. So Shenê, thank you for joining us. How are you today?
Yes, I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. This was something I was saying was well overdue. So I was looking forward to just having this conversation with you. And just tapping into, some of the knowledge that you would like to share. First, before we get into that piece, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I am an entrepreneur. I started my own company back in 2002. I started out in government contract auditing, and then that turned into contracts management because I was auditing the contracts from the different companies that were awarded to do business with the government. And I also, early on, I wanted to be a lawyer. So this is a good mix of business acumen and legal analysis and review. And I've also always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I'm very passionate about helping other people, whether it's a solopreneur, someone that wants to get started in business, grow generational wealth and financial security through entrepreneurship, specifically targeting the government market. So I'm very passionate about that. One fact that drives me is that over 80% of families use generational wealth with the second generation. So the US government is the largest buyer in the world. So when you have an understanding of how to navigate that space and build a sustainable business with that, that can help in terms of equity, in terms of wealth, in terms of being able to make the kind of choices that you might want to make for your life. I also very passionate about family and maintaining, quality time and being a whole person. So I'm also an actor, and I really enjoy that as well.
Oh, you dropped that bombshell on me with the acting piece. But I'm really, happy to kind of see that trajectory of everything. So you started out in this space doing government contract auditing. How was that
Yes.
process? And I guess, how did you fall into that? I guess that's a question.
Right. So when I was in high school, surprisingly, I'm from Ohio, and DESE was really big there. And they had a summer program where they needed high school students to assist with the audit office. So at that time, I also was like, I'm going to be an accountant major and go to law school. So this will be great. Well, the good thing is that it helped me grasp an understanding of accounting and the auditing function within the government. And it also helped me realize I really prefer to do marketing and business more so than I do in terms of counting numbers. However, the government, since it is treasury funds that are paying for these government products and services, the government has to be good fiduciaries of that money. So it's important to understand the accounting practices and estimates and processes that make for a compliant proposal, as well as a compliant and successful contract award. So I'm very grateful about that. That was my senior year of high school. And then during college, I had an internship at Wright Pat Air Force Base Hospital, the military treatment facility for TRICARE, auditing those contracts. At that time, it was called Champus or OChampus. Now it's TRICARE, which is the government's version of healthcare for military and veterans. So it gave me a wide range of experience in terms of accounting and business acumen because I had to learn about the industry in order to be able to perform a review of what they should or should not be doing.
Absolutely. And as a veteran, completely understand the TRICARE situation and
Oh,
getting
yes. Well,
getting your start in that space was definitely, I'm pretty sure provided a lot of work and learning
yes,
experience at the same time.
yes. And thank you for your service. That's wonderful.
No, thank you. And so tapping into the company, would you mind telling us a little bit about your company, Commodore Consulting?
Sure. So, as I've already stated, I've spent time on the government side as a contract administrator, contract specialist, helping putting bids together, making award decisions, conducting pricing reviews. As a consultant and business owner, I am now on the industry side, helping businesses or independent contractors put together their proposal responses, helping them with marketing, messaging, and planning. There is, as you know, small business certification with the government. So I work with people to get their 8A certification, also GSA schedules. And then I, to myself, am still a government contractor. So I provide acquisition support services to various government agencies. And I also conduct training to different government agencies on how to do procurement and price analysis and cost analysis, as well as leadership development.
Wow. So you provide support on both sides of the aisle, as it
Yes,
relates
I
to
do.
training. Wow. Okay, that's amazing. And tapping into that piece. So one of the components that you mentioned is you assist small businesses in the process of getting writing the proposals, but also getting their 8A certification. Um,
Yes.
Now I know this is completely like off topic, but I'm excited to really hear, how that process shifted for you after the recent updates to the program.
Right. So let me say too that I previously served on the National Board of Directors with NCMA. And
Mhm.
I strongly believe that any field that you're in that you want to do business with, you need to be associated with the professional association dedicated to policy and learning around that. So, through my work with NCMA, I'm no longer on the National Board of Directors, but I'm still on the Board of Advisors. I am also part of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council. So, this has been something that I'm very passionate about equity in the government space, equity in careers, just equity overall, whether it's environmental or social justice, whatever that is. My feeling toward the court issues now centered around, affirmative action and business is that I think the myth that people don't realize is a myth is that businesses are just getting this certification just because of a race or gender status. That is not true. There is a very specific process that the SBA, the Small Business Administration, requires every business to go to. So you're not just checking a box that you fit some minority status. There's paperwork that has to be provided to prove that you are a responsible and a responsive individual. And this is in accordance with the laws and regulations that have exhibited, that have been in existence for over 20 years, for decades. So, with the certification, there is a business plan requirement, there are resume reviews, there are revenue and tax reviews. So, it makes sense. You can't just get this just because you are a particular race or gender. It's much more involved than that. So, I think that was a myth that grew into all of these other things that just don't apply. Unfortunately, the additional requirement for a social written narrative, documenting your experiences to prove you were discriminated or treated adversely.
Yeah.
My issue that I have with that is because it's another example in which people that are underrepresented are having to prove and verify their experiences in many cases
Absolutely.
to people that have never had them.
Oh my.
So to now have to continue to say, this happened to me, let me prove to you that this is true and this was my experience.
Mm.
I do not like that. However, there is a way in which we know how to follow the rules and comply so that we can continue to participate in this program. I
Absolutely.
believe that although this has happened initially with the 8A or certification, I do believe it's going to trickle down into the other small business certifications, women-owned, veteran-owned, because the government rules when it comes to procurement and acquisition are based upon fair and equitable, fair and reasonable practices. So you can't affect one group without affecting all of the others.
Wow. And I think that was such a necessary, statement to mention, primarily because they may have thought that something was going to change, but now it's going to change across the board. So we just
It
have to look
will.
forward to that and also navigate that, prepare for that. So make those necessary adjustments. So as you heard, they definitely have a way to make sure that they're still in compliance. So if you are
Right.
considering the 8A certification now, and you've been wanting to do it and just haven't, definitely be sure to reach out, because that component, I've heard a number of different people get hung up on that piece because they're asking for a specific moment for you to be able to prove that. So,
Right. Well, there are ways in which, and we work with people on how to write and address those, because the other thing with the government is, even if it's implied, in order for them to justify the decisions they've made, it has to be expressed in writing. So
absolutely.
there's a way to be very specific and detail oriented so that you are not only defending your position, but you're also giving the government the documentation to justify the decision that they've made. That's that, dual process that needs to happen.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Okay, and then so for my next question, I wanted to kind of hop into it. We already talked about this, but what are some tips or tricks for small businesses who are looking to get into the federal government marketplace?
Do your homework, right? So US government is the largest buyer in the world. There are over 4,500 different regulations guiding how business must be conducted by the federal government. So you need to identify which services and products that you sell. That is done by identifying your NAICS code, NAIC, North American Industry Classification Code, because all federal agencies are required to, when they have a need, right? They're required to describe the need, and they create the RFP, they have to assign a NAICS code to it. Now, what that says is this is where most of the work we believe is going to fall under. It doesn't mean that's the only NAICS code. That's where most of the work is going to fall under. So in order for you to be able to build relationships and establish credibility and find out where you best fit, you need to understand how the government is identifying what you buy. So take time with that NAIC, the NAICS code identification. If you go to sam.gov, you can Google with keywords certain things and get an idea of, hey, I could do this kind of work, and this is the NAICS code they use to that. So you're constantly building that. And then you're going to identify, 3 to 5 agencies that spend the most on what you offer to build the relationships with. So you're doing your homework, identifying your NAICS code, registering in SAM, identifying 3 to 5 agencies that you're going to target to work with, understanding as much as you can about them so that you can better communicate the solution that you offer. And then you're participating in their vendor industry days or matchmaking events so that you can build relationships with the government stakeholders and decision makers, as well as potential teaming partners, because you will need strategic teaming partners. And when we say government stakeholders, we mean contract officer, the only one authorized to sign on behalf of the government, the program manager, the small business officer, or small business advocate, and those kind of representative, right? So we have contractor, and then the government stakeholders. So stay ready. That's my advice. Understand where you fit and the rules related to that, because each agency has unique rules to conduct business with them, and then build that up and learn that on an ongoing basis.
Got it. So it's a continuous learning process, whether you
It
have been
is.
in it 4 years or not? Okay, perfect. All right. So,
Yes, it is. And all businesses, because we also work with businesses of all sizes, small, medium, and large, all businesses have the same challenge. They really do. It is some things are just common barriers to entry and working with the federal government, and that's being able to speak the same talk, right? So industry uses a certain language, government uses a certain language, and being able to map those together so that you can identify the opportunities and have the meaningful conversations is really important. And then having a framework set up in terms of consistent practices and estimating cost or pricing and preparing quotes and responses. So I also remind people, even if you're just getting started, you need your executive resume, you need your business resume, which is your capability statement, right? And then you should also initially write down all of the projects that you have participated in that can be used to justify your experience and knowledge and skills and capabilities in the work that you want to go after. So the government always requires some kind of past performance. And when you have that ahead of time, it doesn't take you so much time to get ready if something comes about that you want to respond to.
got it. And those are like key components for, even just with writing a proposal piece as well, or is it a lot
Yes,
more that kind of
yes.
goes? Okay.
There are key components. So the government will, there is evaluation criteria for RFPs and bids and et cetera. So it usually always includes a technical proposal, a past performance evaluation, and of course, a pricing review. The past performance evaluation is usually based upon, we would like to see a similar project in scope and complexity within let's see, the last 3 to 5 years that you've done this work. And then they'll ask for customer references information that they might be able to call, or that you will be required to submit a past performance questionnaire that they provide and send back. So most people are afraid that, oh, I've never done government work before, I can't bid.
Yes.
That's not accurate. So the way that, remember, it is the US government, right, operating by taxpayer dollars. The US is very concerned about growing and developing the defense industrial base. So the government wants to make sure that they are benefiting from the innovations and new practices of small businesses or new entrepreneurs with innovative practices that can be used. So no one is going to be viewed negatively if there is no federal government experience. You have to be evaluated as neutral. So the way that the experience or past performance is looked at as, do you have federal government experience, working in that sector and understanding the regulations? Do you have state and local government experience? And do you have experience with another commercial entity or business to business? If you're a new business and you don't, then it is, okay, well, do you have any key personnel that has related project experience? Nice. And then as you begin to build your portfolio and win more projects with the government, eventually you will have some government experience that you may be able to speak to. But that is by no means a reason for you not to apply if it is something that you can reasonably do. And it's also a reason why part of your homework is identifying potential teaming partners or companies that you might be able to partner with, if you have some gaps in your abilities or resources, or you want to get started as a subcontractor, which is what a lot of people do. So some people start out, their strategy is to begin as a subcontractor and grow. Some people have such a unique offering that is of critical nature and needed in the federal government space that they are able to win as a prime. So it really depends on your capacity, your capabilities, and the strategy that you have.
Nice. Okay. And now here's another question. For businesses that are small, do you typically recommend them to start out in a federal or focus on state and local?
I don't, my recommendation depends on what their strategy is and their capabilities, because each entity has its own unique needs. And remember that each entity, whether it's the federal government or state and local government, have different funding at particular times. So the federal government's fundings or appropriated funds that are approved by Congress usually go from October the 1st through September 30th. State and local governments tend to run from their end date for the fiscal year is usually June the 30th. right? So you have different periods of which they're motivated by different things. So they're motivated to spend more money at different times of the year. And it also depends on what their area of focus is and how that aligns with your capabilities. The next question is, do you want to do regional and local work, or are you willing to be able to perform work on a national level? So it really depends on an organization's, like I said, capabilities and targets. There is no right or wrong as to which way you start first. There is a strategy that is aligned with that, because we've got to make sure that your strategic, initiatives and visions best align with what area you want to focus on.
Absolutely. Okay, perfect. Thank you for that.
You're
And
welcome.
the next question is, one of the hardest hurdles for businesses to navigate is responding to proposals. So what are
Mhm.
some tips that you would give to businesses that are responding to proposals? And do you recommend responding to proposals your first time out?
It depends on, when you respond to a proposal, remember the organization, you've got to be familiar with the mission and what is important to them and how they operate, the environment in which you will be required or allowed to perform work. So if you do not have a relationship, with that particular entity and you don't know much about it, I would not advise just jumping in responding to an RFP and you're not partnering with someone else that actually has that relationship and that knowledge. Now, that being said, there's also an RFI, request for information or sources sought process, where the government early on, when they're conducting market research prior to releasing an RFP, they will put something out there on public on sam.gov and say, hey, we have this need. This is what we're thinking about it. Can you provide more information? Is really what they're looking for. That will shape the procurement. Will also, if there are enough small businesses that respond, maybe even give them justification to set it aside as a small business project. So don't forget about that process. The government now is heavily involved. GSA has a market research as a service where entities can respond, and they're building a database and all of those kind of things. So don't forget about that process. When it comes to identifying a proposal or responding to an RFP that you are indeed qualified to do, you have the relationship, it is a good fit, because we do have a bid, no bid process of things to help guide you to making that decision. You want to make sure to follow the proposal instructions. The government uses a uniform contract format, UCF. So Section C is usually the statement of work that tells you the required task. Section L are your proposal instructions. Section M is your evaluation criteria. And Section H are the special requirements and clauses that may also be included in the project. So you want to make sure that anyone follows the proposal instructions, write them out. Read the evaluation criteria so that you understand what is most important to the government in terms of how they will be assessing what you're doing. Also, the rule with the government when it comes to evaluation criteria is, if the RFP did not include a certain evaluation criteria, they can't change the evaluation criteria after that has been closed and released. So it's really important to understand how you're going to be evaluated and making sure that you're treated fairly and impartially when it comes to the scoring for that. I cannot stress enough, write it down. Even if you have a relationship with the buyer, the contracting officer, you have to write everything down, because the government, each contract is unique, has to justify their decision. If you don't write it, they can't score it. If they can't score it, you cannot get it awarded. And then the other thing you have to remind yourself is, when you're making a bid or no bid decision, is, can you afford to win? Yes, the government pays, but there's usually a 30-day payment cycle. Can you maintain operations and payroll or whatever you need 30 to 40 days or 30 to 60 days until you receive that first payment? There are very specific invoice instructions with the government. If you don't follow those, they don't have to pay you. And no, that does not mean they're paying you late, because it's not until it's submitted in accordance with the instructions, it's not an accurate invoice to pay to. So if it's a small business, yes, there are regulations stipulating that small businesses should be paid within 15 days. There are still other scenarios, whether it's subcontracting or something else, where payment may take longer. So ask yourself, I can do this work. Can I afford to win and maintain operations without disrupting the services of the customer that I'm serving as I wait to get paid from the federal government or the state and local government?
Nice. I really like that. Can I afford to win? I think that's a big deal
Yes.
that we don't necessarily take, into consideration initially. It's not
Mhm.
until you're in the weeds, writing and
Right.
responding to this proposal. And you're like, wait a minute.
I need to meet payroll.
Yeah. So that's a
Right,
big
right,
deal. And
right.
so to that point, writing a proposal, you mentioned write it down. You mentioned a bid no go, go or no go analysis, right?
Mhm.
You mentioned
Right.
these different components. As a business owner that feels like overwhelmed with already doing all of the day to day from marketing to operations to
Oh,
every single
yes.
component of
Mhm.
the business, you mentioned your company also provides support with proposal writing. What does that look
Yes.
like?
So, there are three main phases to the contract lifecycle: pre-award, award, and post-award. Each one of those require different contract management activities. So, in the pre-award phase, where we would be working with an organization to prepare their proposal response, we are reviewing the proposal, we're putting together an RFP compliance matrix, identifying all of the information that is required, identifying any forms and et cetera that need to be completed, because you've got to meet the questions. If there are last day for questions, we're working with the organization on identifying any questions that they may have. Because asking questions, that is a strategy, right? You don't want to tip someone off with the questions that you're asking. So working with them on, putting together a list of questions, submitting that for, a timely response to help them better complete their proposal, their technical proposal. So we are then identifying the criteria and sections that need to go in the proposal in accordance with the evaluation criteria and the requirements. And we're making recommendations on additional information that may need to be completed or added to their response to give them a competitive advantage and clarify what their value proposition to the government is. And then we're also working with them to prepare their pricing proposal.
Nice.
And
Which
we will
is
either submit it for them or they submit it themselves.
nice. Okay, so that pricing piece is another area that I notice a
Yes.
lot of businesses need support with as well. So
Mhm, mhm.
that is one piece. On the website, I see that there's also a proposal, different proposal, contract and proposal services, but there's a contract management piece. And I'm guessing that's the post, once the contract is
Right.
awarded,
Yes.
then
Yes.
a proposal tune-up. Can we talk about those two?
Right. So the proposal tune-up, sometimes an organization will say, we can write the proposal ourselves. We just want you to review it.
Mm,
So we have a review process and a checklist that we use, proprietary checklist that we use to review the proposal and make recommendations for changes that they can make prior to their submission.
nice.
Also, this has become increasingly important because the government is moving toward what is called a scoring RFP. So the typical process is responding to an RFP and submitting it. Well, now the government is starting to use what is called scoring RFPs. Well, they will say, these are instructions. This is the information we want you to provide. You upload it to a portal. If you don't reach a certain score, then you don't get awarded the contract. And that is a unique process within itself because many people don't understand what's required. Usually, if an organization has to prove that they've done the work before, the government may say, okay, well, give us a copy of a contract award or a statement of work and highlighting how these skills and capabilities fit the need of what we're asking for right now. So there's just some additional things to be mindful of that should also be submitted. And I would also like to add that for proposals, even though the government doesn't always say subcontract management or risk management, they are looking for you to discuss that in some way.
Got it.
So it's one of those things that is just a known fact in the industry. If you've been in the government sector for a while, although it's not specifically called out. An organization should answer the proposal instructions in terms of, technical management, technical processes, management, and staffing and key personnel, but always speak about risk management and mitigation. And if you are working with a subcontractor or you're a subcontractor, that there's some discussion on subcontracting oversight. It is really important that the government does not have disruption of service. So they want to make sure you're capable, and at the same time, make sure that you're not going to disrupt operations or have stop work issues because there's problem with team members or they're not cohesive, or you can't keep people, key personnel in place. All of that is vital. If you think about it, the agencies with the federal government are into two sectors. One focuses on Department of Defense, right? Enhancing the warfighter. That is a very critical mission, to enhance the warfighter and work on national security. The other side are your civilian agencies, focus on the public good and healthcare, such as CDC, Health and Human Services, Consumer Production Agency, right? Treasury, and so forth. So they each have unique missions. And when you think of that and the nature of work that you perform, that's the value that you need to think about, the sense of urgency. So there will be some specific things that you'll need to be able to speak to that you're knowledgeable of and capable of performing in that environment.
Nice. And then for the contract management piece, what does that look like? Because again, we're practitioners.
Mm-hmm. So, I like to try to keep things as simple as possible. So contract management, focus on really program management and project management. This is the time where maybe now you've been awarded the contract. So you're comparing your actuals to projected, that earned value management system. This is what we projected and expected. Now that the project has begun and it's been executed, this is actually what's happening. Are we still in compliance with what the contract requirements say we must do? Making sure that your deliverables and milestones are met, making sure that you're submitting correct invoices and getting paid, and any other requirement that exists. It's also about documentation, extremely important in government. Document. So maintaining a contract file that has the bid documents, your response, any required reports, memorandums on meetings that you have had, copies of supporting documentation for the invoices that have been submitted, any other necessary policy and procedure to perform the work and meet the requirements.
Got it. And these are all services that your business provides as support, right? How can a business learn more about your offerings and get in touch with you to kind of get the ball rolling?
Okay, so of course they can visit the webpage. We are in the process of updating that. So if that's something you do, definitely reach out to me.
Nice.
The webpage at CommodoreConsulting.com. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there, and I will follow up with you.
Nice.
And then in addition to that, we have a QR code now where we have started doing government contractor webinars for those that are interested in government contracting, to just have a deeper discussion on the things that you may need if this is the avenue that you decide to take.
Nice. So here's the freebie as well that we talked about a little bit. If you wanted to kind of share a little bit more about this freebie.
Right. So the freebie is our webinar where we go more into depth about some of the things that more in depth about the things that I've mentioned, identifying your NAICS code, how to identify government agencies that you want to do business with, how to review forecast reports, which is where they list the opportunities that are coming. And how to identify or register. Some of the agencies have small business exchanges or portals where you can list your information and capability statement as a small business, which is a good way for you to stay informed as well.
Nice. Okay, so I know you saw that. Like that, if you missed it, rewind the video or wait until it's back up on YouTube, and you can come back and make sure you take a snapshot of that freebie to join in on that webinar, have that conversation, and really just develop a deeper, understanding and relationship with, experts in the space. So, final question. What would you say is key feedback, or not feedback? What would you say is a tip that you would leave small businesses with?
Stay prepared, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. There's a lot involved in responding to a proposal. There is a lot involved in maintaining knowledge about the policies in government that affect your business.
Nice.
There is a lot involved in building and maintaining relationships. So these are things that are necessary on an ongoing basis. You can't, if you start and stop, it's going to be like you have to start all over again. Right. And when we are connecting and building relationships, that's also a way in which we establish credibility. So consistency is important. This is an area where the government is a large buyer, but the people in charge of making those buying decisions are not experts in the marketplace. You need the ability to communicate and create awareness about your expertise and how it solves their problems. So do your homework and stay ready, keep an open mind, because you are always learning in this space. I've been in this space for over 35 years. I learn something all the time. The marketplace changes, available suppliers change because of technology evolution. We have all new sorts of things and ways of doing things and evolving. So we've got to stay mindful of those things. So keep an open mind, so that, because you are always learning. And then also don't forget that you are an individual, have a balanced life, which to me is wherever you show up and you decide to invest your time, be intentional that when you're there, you can be fully 100% present, whether it's doing your work, whether it's meeting with a potential customer, whether it's giving a presentation, and especially if it's spending time with family and people that you care about. That is what balance is being able to be fully present. And, leadership or entrepreneurship, whatever you want to do, involves self-awareness, right? So be true to yourself. Understand, how you communicate, how you give feedback, and, react with other people, because communication affects everything that we do. And when you stay knowledgeable and you show up for yourself and you keep your word for yourself, you're going to become more comfortable in making decisions and engaging with other people. So, just don't forget about the non-monetary assets of time. We all have the same amount of time, and good health, right? And self-acceptance and understanding of others.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. I love it. We're gonna have to create a list of those different notes, because that was amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank
And thank
you.
you for taking this time, coming on this podcast. We really appreciate the knowledge and the information, and everyone who's tuned in and listening. Don't forget to use that freebie. Don't forget to go to the website.
Yes.
If you need some support, you have people ready to support you. So until then, we will see you all on the next episode. And that is it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. All right, peace.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Absolutely. I really enjoyed the episode. We had typically people ask questions in the chat, but today they were just watching.